Rightio. So this morning I'm going to be talking about some terribly exciting security headers. And it's much more exciting than it sounds. Oh, hang on, wait. Yeah. Well, anyway, so over the last little while, I've added a bunch of new security headers, mainly based on customer requests. And as there's been a kind of a bit more, there's been a lot of sort of hacks and whatnot lately. So it seems that a lot of our customers are getting a bit more up to speed with their security scanning and whatnot. So we're getting a few more people running security scanners and then going, it's broken, it's insecure. And so we've gone through and fixed nearly all of them, or added support for nearly all of them rather than fixed. And yeah, I thought it'd be useful to just sort of run through what we've got and what they are all about, just so we're all on the same page. And yeah, if you do get a question about it, you're up to speed. So here is the list of the ones we do support. It's mostly green, which is good. And I'll go into the detail of each one as we go along. But yeah, some of them we've had for a very long time, like server. The cause one we've had for a long time. So far back that it was before the portal when the portal was in a different repo. So I lost track of the Git history. Cache control, we've had it for a while, but it's changed recently, so it's a bit complicated. But sort of most of them are in the 3.13 kind of range. And most of them are on by default, or in a good state by default. So the server one is pretty boring. It's all about security through obscurity. The idea is you turn off the reporting to say, oh, this is IIS 6.0, and therefore the attacker goes, it's 6.0, therefore it's got that security hole in it, I'll attack it this way. So we've had this for a long time, enabled by default and not configurable. The cause one, once again, we've had it for a long time. Most people will have come across it because it impacts us in dev mode. So you're probably well aware of it. But for those who don't know, it sets the settings, tells the browser how much it will allow code from other sites to interact with our API or our site itself from JavaScript. So it stops some XSS vulnerabilities, cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. So it's once again disabled by default, which is good, or it's set to deny by default. No, disable by default. But it is configurable to what you want to allow to have access. Cache control, not usually considered a security header, but we've had a customer, well, this morning actually, who's quite adamant that they need to modify the cache control header, and they want to set it to a particular thing, and they're calling us on the fact that it's not set right on the app. Minor detail being that our static site has no security stuff in it, or no secure data or anything in it. So it's kind of irrelevant that we're not using that header on the static site, but we are using it on the API. And Rob Erez put a big chunk of effort into making sure that nothing ever gets stored to disk anywhere. It should never get stored on a disk, on a proxy, or even on a end user's computer. So it's only stored in memory for the dashboard only. Nothing else is ever stored. And so that's kind of come in since 3.13, but that's kind of the latest incarnation of it. And so once again, enabled by default and not configurable. So I'm looking forward to the responses from that security team about that one. But the next one is X-XSS-PROTECTION, so cross-site scripting. Browsers, IE and now Chrome have some inbuilt filters to detect and prevent some cross-site scripting attacks. By default, the filters are turned off, but you can enable them. We have enabled it, and we've set it to block mode rather than sanitize mode. So sanitize, it tries to go, oh, this looks dodge, I'll sanitize it so that it's not broken, so your site still works. But it's generally considered not as thorough as it could be. And do you want a half functional site or something that's blatantly not going to work? And so general consensus is block is better than sanitize. So if it does kick in, you'll just get a white page. You'll get nothing, which hopefully should be the right answer. And this is on by default and has a hidden toggle to turn it off, which was a bit of a feature toggle kind of flag that we wanted to make sure that if it did break a big customer, we could turn it off pretty easily. Nearly all of these headers have a toggle that they can turn them on or off. Once again, yes, yeah, we did. We wanted to err on the side of caution. So X-frame options, and that defines what sites that defines whether we're going to allow sites to host us in a frame. And vast majority of people are never going to want to do that. But there are some use cases that you can kind of come up with if you really want to. So we set it to deny by default, but you can change that as well. Content type options. This one allows browsers to go, well, you sent that down as a JPEG, but it was actually some JavaScript. So I'm going to run it as JavaScript, which kind of was a good idea in a high trust world when IE implemented it back in IE very low. But then we've kind of realized that the world's not quite as high trust as we'd all like. So it's set to no sniff. So it's just like disable any kind of sniffing or any kind of automated detection of the file types. And yeah, so that's IE and Chrome do that one, I think. And yeah, once again, on by default, but we can turn it off with a hidden toggle. And so HSTS is probably my favorite, and that kind of makes me a bit sad that I've got favorites out of these headers. But it forces, so old school, you would do a 403 redirect on the server side from HTTP to HTTPS. Once you've set this HSTS header and it's been sent to a browser previously, your browser will do a client-side redirect to use HTTPS, which is a HTTP 307, in case you're interested. And so this is mostly good, or when it's configured right and when you want it, it's good. But if there's a chance you're going to turn off HTTPS, it's pretty bad. And it's a manual. You have to manually go into your browser settings to remove the entry if you decide that you're not going to do HTTPS anymore. And this has a max age part to it. So we set it to, by default, we set it to a year. So for example, when you go to demo, it will redirect to HTTPS, and on the HTTPS connection, it will send this header back and say, for the next year from the last request, please force HTTPS only. So that stops a man-in-the-middle attack, but it still relies on a single HTTP request to happen first. So something called trust on first use. So this is opt-in because, yeah, as I said, if you get it wrong, you've been a world of pain. It's resolvable, but it's a bit of pain. So we made that one opt-in. Referrer policy, and this is how much information is passed to other sites when you click on a link. So this is kind of like, sometimes when you click on a link from Google and on the site you get to, it's highlighted all the words you searched on Google, which is kind of nice and kind of like bugger off. But yeah, so we default to no referrer, so we pass no referrer details to any other sites when we go. There is a bunch of different options for that people can set it to. Yeah, so it's configurable if they want. I don't think we've had any real queries on turning any of these on or modifying them from their defaults, which is a bit surprising, but probably pretty good. Content security policy. This one's kind of pretty complicated and hairy. It limits what browser functionality is available to the app and what sites and sources you can get styles and scripts and images and objects and whatnot from. Once again, it's used as a pretty solid prevention of XSS, but unfortunately, due to the way Angular does stuff, we've had to allow unsafe inline scripts and styles and unsafe eval for scripts, which is kind of like turning off two of the major protections of this whole thing. And yeah, it kind of makes you realize that Angular is kind of a bit more interesting, shall we say, than I ever thought. But yeah, so as we move to React doesn't do any of this unsafe inline and unsafe eval stuff. So we're going to be able to lock it down a lot more. We might have to loosen it up in the short term while we migrate, but once we're on React completely, we'll be able to tighten it up, which will be a good thing. And yeah, it is pretty complicated and horrible, and it's got weird edge cases, and especially even just sort of weird edge cases where a tiny part of our app uses a feature that you'd think, why the hell do we need that? So yeah, please, if you think you need to modify it, please have a chat about it before diving in. One thing that I did seriously consider about implementing for this is a report mode. So what you can do is pass it a URL so that if something does get blocked because of this policy, it will send a report of what got blocked by what aspect of this rule. And it's kind of, yeah, that sounds pretty nice, but in the end, it's just a HTTP post and done by the browser. And it's kind of like, that's kind of good having this logging, but hang on, we're just opening up an endpoint that'll accept any kind of HTTP post, and then we're going to dump it in our database or dump it in a log file. And it just so happened, around the time I was looking at this, I saw an interesting one where you can do a denial of service kind of attack by pasting a virus, a bit of virus code that's going to be detected by a virus scanner, and that's going to, if that gets logged to disk, that's going to quarantine your log file. So it's kind of kind of challenges around how do we do this report mode in a secure way, given we can't wrap any security around it. So
yeah, it's all this poison pill. Yeah.
So that one's not implemented. Yeah, there's even some public sites that handle this, but once again, could we promise to our customers that it was going to have no customer data in it? No. So we couldn't really use them either. So yeah, that's a bit of a pain. But anyway, yeah, I think we're in a good spot with it. I don't think we've heard of anything broken by this, which is good, except for dev mode. And I think the guys with the front end refactor have been bitten by this the most. So my apologies. So yeah, once again, defaults to on, but can be turned off. And this last one, public key pins, that kind of goes hand in hand with HSTS. So Chrome and Firefox, I don't know if Edge does it yet. Actually, Edge does now. They have a preload list of signatures for the kind of effectively certificate thumbprints. So when you go to gmail.com, it will only accept a certificate with this thumbprint. So no one can come along, like it won't work terribly well in China where they generate HBS certificates on the fly, for example. They say, oh, you asked for gmail.com. Yep, here you go. So it means that only specific certificates are valid. And I kind of made a decision that we don't really need it. No one's ever asked for it. But I think it works really well for like maybe octopus.com or facebook.com. But it doesn't work for octopus.mycompany.com. Most of the time you're not going to expose that to the public anyway. So it's kind of less important. But yeah, I'm not ruling it out, but it's just never been requested. And so, yeah. But yeah, long and short of it, we've got to an A on this one, which is pretty good. Yay! And the warnings are kind of saying the unsafe eval. So we can't, even if we did public key pins, we couldn't get an A+, which makes me sad. But once we get, so I was that kind of kid at school, yeah. So yeah, even if we did fix public key pins, so I've said that. Once we get rid of eval, we'll be in a better place. And there's also our redirect on our redirect to HTTPS is not quite right, so we need to clean that up. But yeah, and that's improve our redirection. It appears, I haven't looked into it too much, but it appears we're going HTTP to HTTP to HTTPS rather than our first one being HTTP to HTTPS. So that's an easy win. We'll improve our CSP via React once React's in, and then a few maybes that are kind of probably on the low priority list. Cache control on a static site might have benefits in caching, not necessarily in security. And X-XSS-CT is all around Google's certificate transparency stuff. Once again, I think that probably comes in the category of the public key pins. So I don't think we'll probably need that. And that'll be only if customers ask for it. and it'll probably have to be multiple customers rather than one customer. So, and so that's me. That's done. Any questions? Either you're all asleep because it was that boring, or I summarised everything pretty well.
Good job. Good stuff. Good job.
Cool. And I think, Shane, you're up.
Okay. Good morning.
That wasn't just. Oh, no. What? What happened?
Today, I just want to run through some changes with splitting the tentacle. So, for a bit of background, in version 3, Tentacle's brains were split out into calamari, which means that Tentacle doesn't change very much and is backwards and forwards compatible within v3. But we did that, but didn't split the Tentacle out of server. So server and Tentacle are on the same release cadence. So every time we make a release of server, we also make a release of Tentacle. And from a customer's perspective, that looks like a big upgrade all the Tentacles button whenever you upgrade server. So I've got some facts and figures to back up my presentation with science. There's about 100,000 tentacles that we know about. We've done 192 releases of v3. So that's about 21 million tentacle upgrades that have happened needlessly. No, really, from a customer's perspective, this is what it feels like to upgrade tentacles. It's a bit of a pain in the butt. And it's a barrier for people to keeping Octopus up to date, which sucks for us because it's hard to support customers who aren't up to date. And it sucks for customers because they don't get the best product. They don't get to enjoy Octopus at its best. So in version 3.14, Tentacle is now split. You can release it separately from Octopus. And the way it's currently set out, manager.core and shared are published as NuGet packages and consumed by Tentacle, which is then published by a NuGet package, and consumed by Octopus, which publishes manager and core and shared, which is consumed by Tentacle, which publishes itself and is consumed by Octopus. So there's a circular dependency there, which really sucks. But the important thing is the Tentacle that is bundled with server and used in the automatic upgrade is the one referenced in the API test. So that the version reference there should be the one that you want people to get. I've got a few ideas about how to fix this. Splitting the API test would help. Splitting shared into its own repository would help, and maybe making Tentacle more self-contained would help. But if you've got ideas, I'd love to hear them as well. So fixing the dependencies on the to-do list. There's a bunch of other stuff around transitioning to a split Tentacle with the build and deployment, getting release bots sorted out, release notes for Tentacle, and that kind of stuff. So there's an issue with all the stuff to do there. If you have any ideas, comments, or feedback, chuck them in the issue or hit me up on Slack, either personally or in team execution. Oh yeah, and there's a bug bash currently for 3.14, which could use your input as well. There's a Trello board and a permanent Octopus for that. And that's it.
Cool.
Shane, I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
So at the moment, so what I'm trying to figure out, how would that work, this new model in kind of dev mode? So at the moment, let's say if I want to get the server and Tentacle up and running, I run the script, change the instance, hit F5, and they both are up and running. How would that work in the new model?
You have to hit F5 in 2 different places.
So that would be the Tentacle solution and server solution.
Yeah, Tentacle solution and a server solution, yeah. And I'll change the dev scripts so that they work by convention. So if you have your server and Tentacle side by side, it will still set everything up for you. But yeah, there's 2 different solutions now.
So you only need an F5 if you're debugging Tentacle. If you don't care about debugging, you just use the setup scripts like normal. So for most people, you shouldn't change anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Cool. Well, I think that's it.